Hey, and good evening, champion parents, and welcome to our platform where we discuss topics that are real, relatable, and right on time. Come talk to us, Dr. Pert, Miss Lisa, and myself, Miss April, this evening at 313-837-1340. So, what is sibling rivalry? According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, sibling rivalry is a type of competition or animosity amongst siblings, whether blood-related or not. Siblings generally spend more time together during childhood than they do with their parents. What are your experiences with sibling rivalry?
That's a good question, Miss April. This is Dr. Purr. I think that first we have to ask, why does sibling rivalry exist? And we know that it exists because some children feel like they don't get the same amount of attention from their parents, or it can be ineffective discipline that's happening where one child feels like the other child has favoritism. And so parents have to think about that. And children may feel that their relationships with parents is threatened by the other sibling. It could be a older child who now has a younger sibling that is coming into the family. But from personal experience, I don't necessarily think that I have two sisters and I'm the youngest. I don't necessarily think that me and my sisters were ever rivalries, but I do think that we had our disagreements. We just had the normal, arguments, the normal fighting that happens between sisters.
Yeah, I can agree. Yeah, with myself, personal experience, I got two older brothers. Yeah, we just had normal beef. Well, my brother is significantly older than me. I'm 42. He like 8 years older than me, or 8 years older than me. So we were kind of different generations. So of course I was probably more babyish to him, because he was probably more mature and probably just being older. So we just went through our little spats where I would tell on him, he would threaten.
And
Yeah.
that's normal.
I could definitely relate. This is Miss Lisa in the house. What's up, y'all?
Hey, how are you?
Good. But yeah, I could definitely relate. And you know what, Miss April, I can definitely relate to your situation because my brother is 5 years older than me, and it was like the bratty versus the when the
you were the brat.
I guess so. In
my
his
brother said I was the
eyes,
brat.
in his eyes, I was
Because
the
we were
brat.
younger than we were girls, and my brother always used to. Oh, I'm sorry to cut you off.
It's okay. It's okay.
My brother used to always say that maybe like, you talk too much. You just always got something to say. Your brother used to say that too.
Absolutely. And and I even experienced it with my own children, where I noticed that in this situation, my son is the younger one. And I'm telling you, every moment he gets, it's like, well, Layla did this. Oh, Mom, you didn't even see that, did you? And so what I tell them is, sometimes I'm not going to catch everything. And just because you tell don't mean I have to believe you. And it doesn't mean I have to do something about it just because you say something. And are you telling on your sibling to help the situation, or are you telling on them so that you can get them in trouble? And I take that very seriously. We talk about tattletelling and all of that because that's what tattletelling is. You telling to get the other person in trouble, because if you were telling to help them, it's not considered tattletelling, And so that's what I think most siblings do, is that that's where the rivalry comes from. Like you said, the jealousy. They're mad because they're either fighting for attention of some sort, and then it's kind of like the nerve of this person getting away with something. So to me, that's envious as well.
Yes,
Boom.
and sibling competition can be healthy, but sibling rivalry is not healthy. Signs of sibling rivalry might include hitting, name calling, bickering, and just immature behavior.
And it could definitely lead to something more serious.
Yes, absolutely.
You hear stories all the time of like a Cain and Abel, you hear modern day stories all the time of kids or siblings harming each other, or, even going the next step further.
Because I feel like they favorite, yeah.
And it's common. Brothers and sisters will argue, and even sister to sister or brother to brother will argue. And when children and family are close in age, it's normal that they will have disagreements. And I think that is okay, because that's where we teach our children how to respond appropriately to a situation, or if you notice that they do have a disagreement, that one child may be able to advocate more for themselves than another, and you can make it a teachable moment where you could teach both children how to problem solve without the name calling, the hitting, and the bickering, or the immature behavior. What do you all think?
Yeah, I think having a discussion and just trying to teach your children how to handle things appropriately is definitely important. I know my mom, she probably did the best she could with our situation between me and my brother, but I remember I had to be a latchkey kid. I remember having to be a latchkey because I remember I was like, oh, I don't want to be home with my brother, because I felt like, he would be doing some extra stuff, or, and I guess it was just easier for my mom to leave me a latchkey to, I guess, just to diffuse the situation. So you just got to use different tactics and different, whatever suits your situation the best. But I know with my sons, I don't think they necessarily have sibling rivalry because they're only a year and 16 days apart. So they're really, really close. But I know.
That don't mean anything. I
Yeah.
mean, they could still have, not saying that your sons, but just sometimes that may even make the kids, rival more,
Because they're so close.
Right.
But I just
your
know
kids
that,
are probably just close because of how your relationship that you all have together. Because some parents actually do, kind of bring about the sibling rivalry. In some cases, like say, for instance, a father that may favor a daughter, and a son looking like, well, dang, I want that attention too, because they always say
Right.
daddy's girls. Or in the other situation where they said mama's boys, and the girl might envy, that relationship. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah, that's a very good point, because, a lot of times there is sibling rivalry, even though they are close in age. But with Seth and Caleb, I just know that, I just had to deal with them separately. They just got two totally different personalities. They do two things totally different. So one method I would have to use with Seth, I couldn't use with Caleb, and vice versa. So I had to deal with them separately and differently as far as whatever the situation caused. So in saying that in comparison to sibling rivalry, I don't believe that any of that existed with them because they were close, as far as their relationship. But I do know that I had to deal with, just their situation
Each
differently,
child
because they're
differently.
definitely different. Yeah.
And that's important as a champion parent. You recognize that each children needs something differently, and you respond to them accordingly, because what will work for one child may not work for the other. And going back to Miss Lisa's point, what you said, you talked about sibling alienation. That's when, it's real out here. That's where a parent will basically show favoritism to one child, and the other child is craving or seeking that same type of relationship and that same type of love from that parent. So I think as parents, we give our children what they need, but then I think it's also important to be conscious to realize that you are being fair to each child, and that you're giving each child the love and attention that they all deserve.
Right, yeah, because I think as parents, we do give what each other needs, what each child needs. But like you said, Dr. Pert, we need to make sure that it's fair and it goes across the board. And one child isn't feeling a certain way because you did this for one child, and vice versa.
Yeah, and then, parents, you just have to self-reflect. You have to analyze the situation and try to get to the root of the issue. If there are sibling rivalries that are happening within your household, you have to step back and take a look and to see when did it begin? Why is it happening? And how can you make sure that both of the children, well, that all of the children are able to get along? And it may be that you might have to sit everybody down and you all have an open conversation, and you just have to be blunt.
Yeah.
You know, I think the best step in any relationship is communication, honest communication, even when it's hurtful.
Yeah.
And I think that the parent doesn't necessarily have to drive the conversation. They can act more as a facilitator and let everybody speak and go around and set the tone and basically say, okay, you may not agree with this, what your brother or sister is saying, but at least let's respect so we can get to the root of the problem. And then from there, we can problem solve.
Yes, and it requires transparency along with that communication, allowing, for their feelings to truly come to surface so they can able to communicate how they felt or how they're feeling if, within a certain situation. That's very important. So with the honesty and openness, you just got to, and the parents should sit there, of course, be the mediator, like you said, Dr. Pert, and mediate, or the facilitator for the conversation. But I think also what would be effective is to come up with steps to help correct the situation. It requires a plan, of course, and just to properly execute that plan. Because I know sometimes us as humans, we can just be remote and do things in protocol. So when you're trying to do something different, it takes that extra effort.
It does. And so, this may be uncomfortable at first for, everybody, because when you start to express your feelings, you become vulnerable. But I think you can set the tone as the parent, set the expectation like we're not going to disrespect each other. One person is going to speak at a time. And if you disagree, that is okay. But you don't have to, be disrespectful verbally or physically. We are all going to speak and express how we feel. And at that moment, during the conversation, you might not be able to have all of the answers right then and there. The parent can say, well, we will definitely say how we feel, but we're going to reflect on it and then come back and address, so that when our head is clear and we have reflected on what the individual has said to us, we could all come back together, and then that's when we can problem solve. You don't have to problem solve all at once, because I think a lot of times, how can you really problem solve right then and there when everybody is expressing their feelings? I think and that comes with a level of maturity. You have to be able to self-reflect on how you have made the situation worse or how you have made the other individual feel.
Absolutely.
And we have a caller.
Hey, caller. Welcome to Mommy Talk.
Thank you. Hello, ladies. How y'all doing?
Good.
Hey,
how are you?
Good. You talking about sibling rivalries?
Yes.
Yes, if I
kids,
can
it
pronounce
was
the words correctly.
With my kids, it was, I just couldn't, I just didn't, I just tried to do the best I could, because with my sisters and brothers, I was like the second child, and then my youngest sisters and brothers, I was like 10, 14, and 18 years older than them. So I kind of helped my mom raise them, and I never had that with them.
Okay.
But with my kids, it was a totally different thing.
How so?
It was just, I don't know. I don't know if it was the age difference. I just don't know. But they just all the time, the time, they pit with each other. They just, one was jealous of the other one because so-and-so got this and I didn't. I mean, it was just,
Yeah. Well, it must have turned out okay.
It did.
Okay.
It did. But I didn't experience it with me growing up. So with my kids, it was like, I just don't know what to do. I don't believe this because I never had that experience growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can be frustrating when you are in the middle, so to speak, and they're all coming at you with high emotions because they feel that they have a point and they feel that they are right.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yes. And it's always about that favoritism. And
Yes.
I tried not to do it. But
Absolutely.
they always would point out, yes, you did this. And I'm like, okay, whatever.
Yes.
So, ladies, just have a good day.
Okay.
And you
thank you
too.
for
Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Thanks for calling.
Thanks for calling.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, that can be tough. When you try to do the best you can, and you just don't have necessarily the resources
Yeah.
to help you. That's why it's good that Mommy Talk is here.
Hello.
You know, giving resources and just discussing situations to help parents,
Yep.
you know, work through their current issues.
And that's something that's very important anytime when you're dealing with the escalated situation is to remain calm. That's the number one thing. Because when you got two kids, I'm sorry, I'm being personal. So you have two kids that's screaming, you know, oh, she did this and he did this. And it's like, you know, your first reaction is to say, shut up, probably, you know.
Yeah, you know.
But,
You know.
but you don't want, you know, you try not to feed fire with fire, you know.
yeah.
So we have to figure out ways to remain calm.
But I
because
think
I know.
That's the first response because first you're just trying to figure out what the issue is.
Yeah, you're
because
trying
they
to get
both-
their attention and snap them to it and say, hey, it's kind of like a, you know, when you see the movies and somebody's screaming, going hysterical, and they get slapped in the face. You know, it's a
Right.
quick reality
Yeah.
check. But the basic or main thing is honestly to stay calm. And
Yeah.
as you said earlier, actually you and Ms. April and Dr. Pert said to be able to reflect and go back to the situation
Yeah.
later. We cannot be afraid to walk away and say, hey, we'll revisit this later. But sometimes with kids, you know, it's so depending on their age level. Because I know I can see my son, you know, if I just walk away from a situation, he wants to take matters into his own hands,
Oh, yeah.
you know. And so I have to assure him, you know, well, listen, I want to hear you. I want to actually hear you both. You know, what you have to say is so important. I really want to hear you both. Because in my head, I'm saying, like, I'm going to hear you later or you're going to get hurt right now. So,
But that's why, you know, when that occurs, when disputes occur, we allow the kids to go. Maybe you go to your room, you go
Yes.
to your room, and we'll just discuss later. Because that's important. You know, that's allowed for them to collect their emotions and be
Yes.
able to effectively communicate how they're feeling and what happened.
yes.
Yeah, so that's good. That's a good method to use.
Yeah. Stay calm.
There are ways that parents can deal with toxic sibling relationships. The first thing is to allow your children to speak up. Because the other sibling might not know that they may be hurting the other individual. Have you all ever done something and didn't realize that you were hurting the other person?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have. You know, I've done that. And then once you reflect, like, oh my God, I didn't realize I did that. Do you try to change the behavior? However, there are instances where siblings realize what their behavior is, and I guess
And they
they're
still
so
continue. It's still a lot of anger, though.
programmed.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just continue with the situation.
And it's still a lot of emotion and being hurt. But there are times that where I may have hurt someone and I didn't know, and I just refused to believe that I hurt someone because I always felt, and you know, this is going to sound really arrogant, but I always felt like I
I'm
was the
so
nicest and the
sweet.
sweetest person in the world. How could I hurt somebody? You know, and I had to come off my high horse a little bit and understand, you know what, your way is not always the right way. You may be nice, but nobody else has to accept your niceness. Hello.
And that's good. When you bring something to the forefront, it allows the other individual to change or correct their behavior. And I think that parents have to set boundaries for their children and expectations. Teach them this is the way you respond to a situation. This is the way you are supposed to treat your brother and sister. Because sometimes we think that, you know, children or people know how to treat somebody when in actuality they don't. So it's important that, you know, you give explicit examples like,
and then also
you do
model the
this.
behavior.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, modeling the behavior is important so that they can know how to treat somebody. Because I think sometimes, a lot of times as parents, and I know this is coming from my personal experience, we get so overwhelmed with work if we're going to school, by the time we get home, we're completely exhausted, we're tired. But it's still important to model behavior and, give your child that time that's needed and communicate with them.
Yes, it's very important because, as you say, as parents, we have to deal with work, the stresses at work, and then by the time we come home, it's like you just want to lay down in bed and just shut everybody out.
Shut it down, turn it
I can
off.
feel that, but as a parent, it's your responsibility to address issues that are going on in the home, and you don't want to normalize the
That
bad
behavior, yes,
behavior.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And single parents should not be afraid to call the co-parent. I'm big on that. Call the co-parent and let them mediate. Sometimes single parents don't want to include the other parent because they feel like in some ways they're losing control. I can handle it. Why do I need to involve that other person? But it's like you have to understand that's their child too. They have a responsibility as well. And because you may spend the majority of your time with those children, just having that outside voice doesn't mean that you are that you're weak or that you're losing control. But what it means is that the kids need to understand it's not just you all. They have another outlet. So don't be afraid to include that other parent. And it's good for the other parent to know that you respect them enough to
Reach out to them.
to reach out to them and that you care about their thoughts as well.
Right, and it shows them to help them to be responsible and more
Yeah.
involved and actively engaged.
Yeah.
That was an excellent point, Miss Lisa.
Oh,
So, how can parents end sibling rivalry that is happening in the household? We want our parents out there to know that it's normal. You can expect many episodes, but treat your children as the unique individuals that they are, and don't show favoritism. And as Miss Lisa and Miss April said, stay calm and be objective. Don't take one side. Listen to each child story.
Yep, and be patient. Yep, and again, like Dr. Perk said, listen, and try not to be emotional. Because I think we give emotional responses, like Miss Lisa said, in order to gain their attention. But, we got to start thinking outside the box and be more creative and not as toxic when we're dealing with our children, because they'll repeat our behavior.
And I think sometimes when I am trying to diffuse a situation between my kids, I was reading one point, it said, don't look for someone to blame or punish. And so I'm like, I want to know who did it. I want to know who was at fault. I want to know who was at fault, because you're going to pay. But, it's like sometimes that's not the answer. Sometimes you have to even allow your children to be able to come together and let them work out situation, even if they band together and they kind of flip. Just to come out of that sibling rivalry mode where they're like actually working together, that's a good thing. So, so don't look for somebody to blame or punish. Sometimes you gotta, let things fall where they may.
Yep, and sometimes they'll come together and they'll be like, well, you know what, this was wrong of me to say.
Yep,
and they'll actually apologize
Yep.
and, correct the situation.
Yeah.
And that's important. You have to identify the cause of fighting and not look to blame someone. Avoid negative comparisons and just treat all children fairly, because that's important. And have a plan, like Miss April said. You have to have a plan, so that plan can look like you just coming up with basic rules. And even if you have to write it down, and if you have to revisit that and pull it out, that's important, because they will learn that this is our family. This is the family way. So all of our listeners out there, I just want you to say your last name and say, this is the Smith's way. This is the Woods way.
Yep.
This is
And
the champion
parent
way.
way. Yep. And that's good because what'll happen is they'll model the same behavior when they become parents.
Let's figure out ways to deal with these situations. There's nothing wrong with getting counseling. Nothing wrong with getting counseling. Speak up.
But how can a parent change the opportunity?
I think it's more so like take advantage of, make the situation a teachable moment. So if you make it a teachable, because sometimes it's hard for us to do that. Like, but sometimes if we go into G mode real quick, we can look like, okay, how can we, make this an opportunity? So maybe they're arguing over, who's doing, oh, I don't want to wash the dishes. Well, I don't want to sweep the floor. Okay, well, switch jobs or something like that. I would think, it mean to change the opportunities. I was telling my daughter, the difference of taking advantage of opportunities and being an opportunist, and kids grow up to not understand, the difference between the two. Where opportunists will take advantage of situations and abuse them, but a person that takes good advantage of an opportunity, make something beautiful out of it. So that's what I would think. At the end, thank you all for tuning in.
To us, and be sure to check out our website at mommietalk.com. Come join us next week.
Thank you for listening to Mommy Talk, the champions of parenting. And remember, you too can be a champion of parenting. Continue to support and love your children. For additional information, you can contact us at info@mommytalk.com or visit our website at www.mommytalk.com. We can also be found via social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Mommy Talk Network. Please listen to us every Monday at 7:30 p.m. on WCHB Detroit's Gospel Station.
Come talk to us.